Here's a fact. The majority of musicians who blow up are releasing music at a certain pace. So for the past 11 years, I've been seeing a pattern. And while a lot of you have caught on to that, the way you get your music heard is always changing. So in this video, I'm going to discuss what my friends and I who work in music marketing, management, and at labels see that actually breaks artists going into 2025, and how you release music so it gets the attention of potential fans, harnesses the power of Spotify and YouTube, as well as human psychology, which will show the people who come across your music that they should pay attention to you. And here's the best part of this. You could do this all without ever having to play a single live show or pay any money to promotion services or ads. So let's get into it. Spotify and YouTube are going to be the majority of what we focus on, since the other platforms will be a very small part of your streams, no matter what you do. And on those two platforms, you can do intentional actions to promote your music to help get your music heard, unlike those other platforms. So YouTube has by far the most users, and is the way so many fans investigate music at first, especially if your listeners are coming from TikTok Reels and nearly always YouTube Shorts. This is where you will often be getting your initial listens, since it's free, at least as long as the listener sits through some insufferable ads. But while Spotify and YouTube are both top ways people discover music, the place where relationships are really built is YouTube, since the time spent investigating videos, watching interviews, playthroughs, vlogs, behind the scenes videos, or live streams are the ultimate way musicians give an audience the lore that gets fans talking, as well as the consumption time that keeps you on top of fans' minds so they're reminded to turn you on when it's music listening time. And let's talk about what gets you heard by new music fans and then gets them to build a relationship with you instead of being another artist on a playlist that they don't see mentioned on social media once and they don't check out. So the four pillars of this are to appeal to algorithms, then we have constantly call attention, then we have give fans a reason to talk, and then lastly we have increase relationships. We want to always be looking at how we're going to promote our music to maximize each one of these four pillars. First, let's discuss how you appeal to algorithms. One of the things so few people seem to get is that algorithms are not evil computer programs, but instead are based on studies of what makes humans pay attention, and appealing to them is appealing to human nature and will get the humans to pay attention to you. So let's talk about that human nature, since that's what the algorithms are built off of. There's a concept I like to call attention propensity. Now, if you aren't so into big words, I mean, come on, I know my audience. Propensity means an inclination or natural tendency to behave in a particular way. And with music fans, the propensity is pay attention to artists that they are reminded of regularly. To go deeper, potential fans' attention is naturally drawn to people who do cool things regularly and call attention to themselves by doing things that are exciting, different, or what I like to call eventful. Eventful means cool content, different things that people have usually seen, striking images, compelling stories, and of course, great songs. Audiences' propensity is to be drawn to things they see that they deem important and they're going to need to know about to be able to have conversations with people that they admire. And by admire, I mean want to be friends with, impress, or sleep with. So let's get into the next pillar, which is give fans a reason to talk. The reason potential fans actually investigate who you are and then become a fan of yours is because they feel the need to know who you are in order to deepen their relationships with others that they want to bond with. Now, here's the funny thing. Some people find the value they give others knowing about music before other people, and they try to find these artists before other people do. And I know you all love real life examples, so let's give the ultimate one I can think of right now. Charlie XCX's rollout for Brat was a masterclass in constantly inserting herself into the culture her fans live in and keeping the conversation going. And if you're interested in this, I just made a video on how she changed album rollouts that's linked below. But some of the reason this album rollout was so masterful is if you were a fan of hers, you never knew what was going to happen next for the entirety of Brat's summer. As one minute she's throwing a pop-up concert outside my gym where she had bought a billboard dubbed the Brat Wall, where she'd constantly be putting up announcements of what was coming the next day. And then another minute she's going out to clubs and she just seems to be everywhere. Even if you don't have 1 millionth the fans Charlie does, the feeling of you need to stay tuned because something new is going to happen is what gets your followers talking, and then everybody around them feels like they need to know who this person is to be able to talk about them. And when you feed fans things that hold their attention, not just announcements of
big things coming,
you hold their attention, which is also why you see celebrities like Kanye not care when they just say ridiculous things that get them in the news, because they know that as long as they stay on top of their fans' minds, they're winning. Anyway, when you're constantly putting out things, people take you seriously. They want to know what happens next so they can tell others about it. In 2024, a study was released by YouTube on fans, and it showed that 8% of Gen Z now consider themselves professional fans, meaning they earn money from talking about things online. And to that, 65% of Gen Z consider themselves creators. And what this means is there's a whole culture of people talking and discussing things online. And unless you feel like something people need to know in order to bond with the group of people they want to bond with, you don't get discussed. And these creators make memes, explainers, influencer videos, video essays, stories, and they play your songs in them. They make reaction videos, dances, and all sorts of things that get you to begin to be a part of the conversation conversation. And the artists who are doing cool things and call attention to themselves on a regular basis become a part of the conversations these creators discuss. And it's not just Gen Z, there's so many older creators. I mean, you're looking at one right now. Anyway, when you're doing really cool things, they want to make sure they don't miss anything. Whereas when you occasionally pop in and say hi and do something every month or two, you feel boring, like the thousands of other musicians not worth watching, and you don't stay on top of people's minds. And they don't think they have to pay attention and hit that follow button so they know what you do next. They just go,
maybe I'll see another one of their mid-songs when it comes up in my Discover Weekly.
When you use attention propensity, they feel it will be necessary to know about you to bond with other people they want to be closer with. So in order to harness that psychology's power, it means doing what I call consistent sustained promotion, or CSP, which if you haven't heard me explain before, many musicians suffer from absent periods where they drop off the radar of their fans all the time and go dark for no good reason. This inconsistency depletes your momentum and people's feeling that they need to stay in touch with you and know who you are. Consistent sustained promotion means releasing music regularly for a sustained amount of time where you consistently call attention to it so that people feel the need to pay attention to you. And now we get to the part of the framework which we call constantly call attention. In tangible terms, this usually means doing a small thing like telling a story or making a highly striking image every other week. This means releasing what fans want most from you, aka music, on a regularly sustained basis, and creating content around it that keeps the conversation going about it and reminding fans to keep giving their attention to your relationship and going deeper with it, and then they inevitably chat about you to other people. But let me make this real blunt for those of you who find this to be a metaphor when it's barely veiled. It's the irrefutable law of how music promotion works is that if you're consistently promoting your music, if you're doing cool things on a regular basis, people see you as someone to pay attention. But if you go dark all the time and just write "stream our music, bro, big things coming," and a caption with a picture you posted for weeks on end, they see you as an annoying clown who's not putting the effort in and that no one's going to talk about in the future, so they won't need to know who you are. So why would they want to pay attention to you when they could be paying attention to all these other artists who are putting out content that's exciting for a long period, like 12 to 18 months? And if you don't get this, I highly suggest you subscribe to my free newsletter, Music Marketing Trends, since I just wrote about this, and the newsletter has tons of content you could read in a few minutes each week that goes deeper on what we discuss in this channel, and the link is in the description. Now, if you're doing the CSP method of promoting, your name will be coming up all the time. It's getting recommended in the algorithms, since let's remember, all these platforms like TikTok and Instagram want you to be posting at least, at minimum, 10 times a month. And if you're telling stories around your music, popping up on social media, and people are going to finally click and learn more about you. But the key to do this is you need to do eventful things. And for all of you who wonder why no one's paying attention, doing eventful things gets fans talking, and eventually gets the press talking, and doors opening, and all those creators we talked about chatting about you online. So I plan this while doing release strategies with artists. What I always tell them is they need to ask themselves, is this the most eventful music video we can make? And what are the most compelling stories you can tell around the music? But let's go deeper. Let's think about how all of us discover music. Sure, lots of it's on playlists or scrolling through TikTok or Reels, but much of it is being reminded constantly by seeing it pop up on trusted people on social media, or seeing a name come up over and over again, or they're on features that you read on Spotify, or other people talking about that artist that you know. Now, if you just make boring posts all day and don't care about quality and just care about quantity, you'll be deemed uneventful and die in the algorithm. You get muted or you won't get spread, and that's how it works. And yes, muted is a thing. Take note of that, reply guys. But when you're doing eventful, exciting things, they keep turning to you to ingest things when they need to be entertained. Then they deepen their relationship with you. But you may be wondering, what does this look like in an actual release strategy? Let me cook for one more second and then I'll get there. Now let's think of the other way you discover music, which is when one person is constantly reminded of you and feels a connection to your stories, they talk about you to their friends and on social media. They tweet and share a story and say something like,
"Man, when Incel Hypebeast said that he had a meet cute at the Purge, I felt that. I've had that too."
And then someone who admires that person who shared the story wonders who the hell Incel Hypebeast is. And then they go down the rabbit hole, and if your track bangs, they hit play, and now you have someone invested in paying attention to you because they want to connect with that other person and go deeper to understand you so they can talk with that other person. And now you may find love through Incel Hypebeast. And hopefully they become a fan of your music. Friends and admirers try to explore the people they bond with's interest, and this is how you get your music to spread. But to be deemed eventful, you need to be doing things that get people talking continuously. So they'll talk about you when they see their friends, go online to chat, and what does that is a consistent sustain of doing those eventful things, hence consistent sustained promotion. So when I'm doing consulting calls, so many of you will say to me,
"Well, in that case, I'll just overperform and I'll release a song every week or 2 weeks."
And as you can see, the opposite of that is the people who take their sweet time and wonder why they never get any momentum and their streams die out constantly. But let's get into why that happens, since it seems unclear to far too many of you. On the weekly weekly and bi-weekly side, you're putting out so much content, no one takes you seriously. Why bother listening since it seems like you're just putting out any crap you can pump out? Now, I know a ton of you think,
I got 25 songs and they're amazing.
but I cannot get this through your skulls enough. The only artists that works for are the ones that have proven to the world that they have great material, and then they meet the demand from the fans with giving them lots of it. But for now, in this world where 40,000-ish songs are released a day, the last thing we need is more songs instead of just the best songs. It does you no favors because the world wants to hear the best of you, not sort through a bunch of bullshit. Music is not a lottery ticket. I know a lot of you think it is, and you may be too great to realize this, but songs at the heart of them are an emotion. And oftentimes, you've not figured out how to make that song as powerful and emotion as possible, which is why you think all of them are so good. So I implore you to pick your best material. And that doesn't mean throw away those songs, but pick them up from time to time and think of the emotion you're communicating and try to think of how you can make them more powerful, because just because they're sitting in your vault doesn't mean they never have to come out. And I know some of you will say,
Jesse, what about NBA Youngboy or Russ or your buddy Rick G? That's how they did it.
Russ was an exception, and it was very complicated, and there's a lot more to that story than putting out a lot of music, and frankly, I've debunked this enough for a lifetime. Hit the description if you want to learn more about that, because I got more important things to deal with right now. But I will say the biggest problem with this is that if you're like most musicians and you're trying to get your track momentum on TikTok Reels or Shorts, it's often at the 30-day mark where posting your song starts to gain momentum. So if you're releasing a song every 14 days, it never has the chance to really take off. And since Spotify will only allow you to submit one song at a time for editorial playlist consideration, and they ask you to do it in 28 days in advance, releasing a song any more than that becomes a fool's game, since Spotify editorial playlists allow you a huge opportunity for an explosion in your fan base. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, be sure to watch my video on how to write a Spotify editorial playlist that actually gets you on playlists. I explain everything there, and it's in the description. And I know a lot of you have argued we're out of the playlist era, and just because the numbers aren't as big on editorial playlists doesn't mean that they don't feed those algorithmic playlists where your big numbers come from. The fact is, when you're on those editorial playlists, that's who gets set up for the biggest numbers. So you're out of your mind and not reading the data deeply enough if that's what you think. When you're posting songs though every 2 weeks, like some people recommend, you don't give them enough time to catch on and move on before they ever reach their full potential. And that's one of the main things that changed since we entered the earworm era. But like I was saying, this is the #1 thing you should be trying to exploit, since it offers you the most chance of a reward for a little bit of effort that you can make when you release at the optimal clip of every 4 to 8 weeks. But we also need to make YouTube happy, which actually rewards weekly or bi-weekly uploads. So this means when we're promoting your song, a lot of the content we will want to make is for YouTube. But we didn't discuss the people who are over on the other side of this equation, where the people who put out a song every 3 to 6 months. These are often the people who tell me they can't make a song faster because they are masterpieces, and sometimes that's even the case, that they're really complex songs and need to be aged like one of those steaks from a steakhouse where lame old people in suits want to take me for business meetings. If that's the case, well, sadly you're not going to gain a lot of momentum, no matter how good the songs are, but you could spend some time and save up a bunch of them so that you can release every 6 to 8 weeks for a period of time. And that's what I really suggest, is that you should bank up a bunch of songs and then try to sustain that for 12 to 18 months of trying to do consistent, sustained promotion. But more often than not, these people lose motivation or are just not up for the commitment of making content fast or making songs fast. And that's fine, but the fact is, in an attention economy like this, if you're releasing this often, no one finds it exciting, your word of mouth dies even when your songs are good, it's just not going to do you any favor. Whereas here in the optimal zone, when you're releasing monthly to bi-monthly, the magic happens. And we should talk about the most determinative part of this. A lot of the work you have to do, like making a minimum viable video, a lyric video, a music video, chopping up short form content, is a lot of work for a lot of people. And in this zone, it's manageable for a lot more people, whereas the weekly and bi-weekly people just often skip promoting and drop songs and make a stupid social media post. So they don't even worry about this, and they just hope that everything will go their way and luck will happen upon them. It's funny, since some of the 3 to 6 month people could handle this, but they lose motivation and get depressed because nothing happens because they don't have any momentum for releasing so slow. And they never give it a try, so all they ever know is a lack of progress. So let's talk about what my release strategy is to harness all that. And yes, it's a slight modification for the one I've mentioned in the past. It's on week 1, you release a minimum viable video, aka a visualizer where there's some motion in the video. Basically a video you spend no more than 2 to 6 hours on that has a little bit of motion so that broken tension attention spans come over from TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube Shorts, you can keep their broken brain engaged with a simple video with some motion. And if you want to learn more about that, hit the description for my video on minimum viable videos. Anyway, once your song and video comes out, for the next 2 weeks, you tell stories around that, and we're going to get way more into depth when I re-release my 60-day plan video, which is coming up really soon, since I have a huge update to it. So make sure you're subscribed to get notifications, since this is going to be one of the next videos I put out. Then after that, you put up your lyric video or a different visualizer, and for those 2 weeks, you continue to tell stories around it. Then 2 weeks after, you post your music video, and depending on how well your song's reaction is, you will promote it for 2 more weeks and tell stories around it, and possibly, if it's doing really well, release an alternate version, which can be an acoustic, a slowed down, sped up, a version with strings, adding an artist to do a feature on the bridge or a verse, do a remix, whatever. But keep giving the audience content to ingest and discuss, and most of all, keep the intention propensity towards you engaged. One of the things you see now all the time with smart DIY and major label acts is to pour some extra fuel on the fire of the song that's really blowing up, is to put out these alternate versions. I see it all the time now when songs go viral, that this is how they keep promoting it, is they make an alternate version. Use your imagination at what would accentuate the song's emotion or bring another context to it that the audience would like, and get that out there as fast as you can so you can keep this going. Since the fact of the matter is, I could name a dozen songs at the top of my head where both the alternate version and the main version do great and complement each other. The alternate version allows you to tell more stories and demand more attention and get people to think they really need to pay attention to this song, since you devoted so much energy to it. And especially if you see this song is doing way better than your others have, it's really worth it to devote that energy and get it out fast. And then when you're done with that alternate version and promoting that, well, it's time to do this with another single and do it all over again, since sustaining this is what works to build you up. But now we get to the fourth pillar, which is increased relationships. And a lot of where this gets done is telling stories. And that can be on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, or on a grid post. But where the real money is doing it on YouTube with playthroughs, vlogs, shorts, behind the scenes, since the YouTube algorithm is so good at finding you the exact fans who should be watching this stuff that you can convert over to your music and build a deeper relationship with them, since watching you actually do things in long form really creates deeper relationships. It makes people think about you more. I have a whole playlist on how you win on YouTube if you want to go deeper in the description. But I want you to get that Instagram stories and grid posts are mostly for people to stay in touch with you and for them to deepen a relationship with you. They're not for discovery. TikTok and Instagram Reels are where you do discovery and bring people over to Spotify and YouTube and get them to follow you on Instagram. And this is one of the main things I teach on my member feed every single, which by the way, for $5 a month, you get over 6 hours of videos every month where I explain the latest social media trends, answer your questions, listen to your music and give critiques to it, and dissect how the biggest artists in the world are blowing up from 0 fans to now making their dreams come true. And I also go over the latest promotion methods at the top of every one, and then answer all of your questions that you have each week at the end of it. So you should really tap in there, and there's a link in the description if you want to. But since all of this is messy, we need to talk about attention too. So many people have busy weeks, or perhaps they went online to see the single announcement that you made, and then they forgot about your song because things got crazy, even though they'd probably love it. When you tell stories about your music and come out with a new content, like a lyric video after 2 weeks, or a music video 2 weeks later, it allows the algorithm to remind people, as well as having your eventful stories to tell around your song. And you can post those stories to Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, or wherever else. It makes it so you actually get noticed and you seem eventful when you have all this stuff going on and you demand attention propensity. Now, I know some of you are asking, how long does this take? And the answer is usually mostly about what you consider a success, how good your song is. So it's hard for me to answer that, but what I really see is most of the artists that are really happy with their growth, they've been sustaining it around a year to 18 months and really doing all this work. And let's remember, it only takes 6 songs a year to fill up a calendar. And if you release that minimum viable video and a stream of your song on all the platforms the first week, then 2 weeks later that lyric video or visualizer, then 2 weeks later a music video, and then 2 weeks later an alternate version, you'll cover all of the weeks of the year. And it'll take 12 songs to cover the next 2 years, which really adds up to a full length's worth of music. And yes, the most common question you all ask me is if you should still release an album. And the answer is of course. Since when we release albums, it allows a conversation to start, and it's a big inflection point, and you can get a lot more attention, and you can get a lot more people to ingest your body of work and understand you better and be capable of making conversations with other people that spread the word about you. And of course, I've made a video about this, and of course it's in the description. But let's be clear about all of this. This does not work if you're not consistent meaning you have to hit your deadlines by putting out this content regularly, and it needs to be sustained, meaning you don't give up after 2 songs. For many of the artists I see this working for, they gain momentum with each song, but the bigger gains come from sustaining it for a long period of time. And by promotion, it means you actually work hard every day to get your music everywhere, meaning you also need to find your community and really make sure you're getting your songs spread as much as possible. And I know some of you will ask about the waterfall technique since we discussed albums before. That's the last thing I want to leave with since we're talking about how you release music. The waterfall technique is where each time you put out a single, you assemble it onto some sort of album. Since really albums are just artist-sanctioned playlists, and you group songs together so that when someone comes to listen to it on the platforms, it doesn't play another artist's song next, it plays your song next since it sees it as an album. And the waterfall technique is crucial to getting people to increase those relationships. So we want to do that until your album comes out. We want to always be waterfalling your record. But you can waterfall into multiple releases. So let's say you have some ballads and then you have some rockers. You can separate those out onto 2 different waterfall releases, and as you release each type of song, put them up there. But the waterfall technique, or linking to a playlist of all your songs, is really how you retain people on Spotify and help make releasing a music effective. And every distributor has an FAQ on how to do this, and I would explain it in this video, but it'll change the week after I publish it. So hit your distributor's FAQ on how to do it. So if you watch this far, I've made a video that I mentioned with my 60-day plan that gets into much more of the details of how you promote your music around this. It's a step-by-step guide to that. It's linked in the description or on the screen now, and you should watch that next. Thanks so much for watching.